began like one of those lazy Sunday afternoons where nothing important seems to happen, and then everything changes. Daniel stood in the kitchen, barefoot, wearing that ridiculous apron with the Star Wars pun that he insisted on using whenever he cooked. He was making pancakes, humming some 90s rock tune, when he suddenly poked his head around the corner and said, "Hey babe, guess what?" I looked up from my laptop, halfway through answering a client email. There's a deal on those DNA kits I told you about. $39. I think the universe wants me to find out if I'm descended from Vikings. I rolled my eyes playfully. Or medieval accountants. He grinned. Either way, I want to try it. Just for fun. Sure, I said, barely thinking. Go wild. Find your long-lost pirate ancestors. That was Daniel. Curious, goofy, fascinated by family trivia and any mystery he could chew on. The kind of guy who'd get lost in Wikipedia rabbit holes at 2 a.m. trying to connect dots that no one else even noticed. So a DNA test? Yeah, it fit him like a glove. He ordered the kit that same night. I remember how excited he was when it arrived 3 days later. He unboxed it like it was a birthday present, carefully following the instructions, spitting into the little plastic vial and sealing it with the precision of a scientist on the verge of a breakthrough. Here lies my genetic code, he announced dramatically, holding the sealed package over his head like some kind of holy relic. May it reveal secrets and scandal. I laughed. May it at least not come back and tell you you're 100% basic. Excuse you, I am at least 7% mysterious. We joked about it for a few days. Then forgot about it. Weeks passed. He went back to his routine. Work, gym, gaming nights with his college buddies. I went back to mine. Graphic design gigs, grocery runs, catching up on our favorite shows. Life moved normally. Comfortably. And then on an otherwise uneventful Wednesday he got the email. Your DNA results are ready. We were sitting on the couch, TV humming in the background, when his phone buzzed. He opened the app with the excitement of a kid unwrapping candy, scrolling through the ethnic breakdown first. Okay, look at this. Eastern European, Scottish, bit of Italian. Ooh, 2% North African. Nice. You're officially exotic. He chuckled and then fell silent. I turned my head. What is it? He didn't answer right away. His eyes had narrowed. His thumb stopped scrolling. Daniel. He swallowed. Says, I have a sibling match. A full sibling. What? I sat up straighter. Like, a cousin? Or someone who put in the wrong info? No. It says full sibling. Look, he showed me the screen. The app displayed a person named Aaron T. Sullivan, age 38, with a match labeled immediate family, full sibling. I blinked. That doesn't make any sense. You don't have siblings. You've told me that your whole life. I don't, he said. At least, I didn't think I did. He stared at the screen like it might change if he looked hard enough. I could see the gears turning in his head, questioning everything he knew, everything he'd ever been told. His smile was gone, replaced with a blank, heavy stillness. You okay? I asked gently. He nodded, but it wasn't convincing. Yeah. It's weird. Probably a glitch. But I saw it in his eyes. A shift. Like a shadow passing over something that had once felt safe and unshakable. That night he didn't touch his dinner. He barely said a word. And in the days that followed, the man I knew, the man who used to joke about secret royal bloodlines, started to vanish in ways I couldn't yet understand. The change in Daniel was subtle at first, like a painting that's been slightly tampered with, only noticeable if you stare long enough. He still got up at 7 a.m., still made his overly complicated pour-over coffee, still kissed the top of my head before heading off to work. But something was missing. The kiss felt colder. The smile didn't quite reach his eyes. His laugh, when it came at all, sounded like a recording on low volume. And the phone. He was always on his phone. Not texting, not doom-scrolling through social media like most people. He was reading. Researching. I'd catch glimpses of DNA websites, genealogy forums, ancestry message boards. Charts. Timelines. Long threads of strangers swapping stories about surprise siblings, stolen identities, secret adoptions. I tried to give him space. I assumed it was just a shock, something he needed to process. But then the questions started. Do you think a parent could lie for their whole life? He asked me one night while we were doing the dishes. I looked at him, water dripping from a plate in my hand. Lie about what? Anything big. Like, having another kid. Or not being your real parent. The way he said it made the back of my neck prickle. There was something raw behind the words, like he was testing the waters. I guess. People lie for all kinds of reasons, I said carefully. Sometimes to protect themselves. Sometimes to protect others. Sometimes to hide something awful. He nodded slowly as if confirming something he already suspected. Yeah. That's what I'm starting to think. He dried his hands on the towel and walked out of the kitchen without another word. That night I found him in the study, door closed, blinds drawn, lit only by the blue light of his computer screen. I stood in the hallway for a full minute, watching his silhouette through the glass panel in the door. His face was tense, eyes locked on the screen. One hand gripping a pen, tapping it anxiously on a notepad that was already filled with scribbles. When he noticed me, he shut the browser in a flash. "Hey," he said, forcing a smile. "Didn't hear you there. What are you looking for?" I asked softly, not accusing, just trying to reach him. "Answers," he replied. "I just want to know the truth." "About what?" He hesitated, his mouth opening then closing again. "About who I am." That sentence sat between us like a dropped glass. I didn't know what to say. My Daniel, the man I had spent nearly a decade with, the man who knew all my quirks, who made me feel safe even on my worst days, was unraveling. Quietly. Piece by piece. That weekend he didn't go out with his friends like he usually did. He stayed home, obsessively glued to his laptop. He barely ate. I made lasagna, his favorite, but he only took 2 bites. Sunday morning, I woke up to find him already dressed, sitting on the edge of the bed with his phone in hand. "I sent him a message," he said quietly. I rubbed my eyes. "Who?" "Aaron. The guy from the test. I messaged him on the app's platform." He responded. I sat up straighter, suddenly fully awake. "What did he say?" Daniel's voice was flat. "He said he was adopted. That he never knew his biological family. But he uploaded his DNA a few years ago, hoping to find someone. Anyone." I felt a chill run down my spine. "Did he say anything else?" He nodded, his jaw tight. "He said he was born in Michigan. In 1986. In a hospital called St. Mary Bells. Oz. That's where I was born." I blinked. "Wait, are you saying you were both born in the same hospital?" "Same year. 2 days apart," Daniel murmured. "Same wing." He remembers a nurse saying something about twins being born that week. He always wondered. "Twins." I repeated. He looked at me, and for the first time in days, there was a spark in his eyes. Not joy, not curiosity. Fear. "I think he's my brother," he said. "I think we were separated. And no one ever told me." I stared at him, mouth slightly open, heart pounding. Suddenly, all the weird behavior, all the hours he'd spent researching, made perfect, horrible sense. He wasn't just shaken by a test result. His entire identity was cracking apart. And I didn't know how to help him put it back together. Daniel disappeared on a Thursday morning. At first, it didn't feel like he had vanished. It felt more like he had slipped out early for something. The gym maybe, or a coffee run. But as the hours passed and his side of the bed stayed cold, the dread crept in like fog seeping under a door. His keys were gone. His wallet too. But his phone? His phone was missing from its usual spot on the nightstand. And then I saw it, his wedding ring sitting silently on the bathroom counter. I stared at it for a full minute, unmoving, like if I blinked it would disappear and all this would turn into a misunderstanding. But it didn't. Daniel always wore his ring. Even when he was working on the car or washing dishes, he never took it off. It was part of him. For him to leave it behind meant something. Something final. I walked around the house like I was moving underwater. His closet looked barely touched. His toothbrush was still in the cup, his laptop still on the desk. But when I checked the drawer in his study, the manila folder with the printed DNA report was gone. Along with the leather-bound notebook he'd been filling with names, maps and dates for weeks. I tried to call him. The number rang, then went to voicemail. I tried again. And again. By noon, I was sitting in the living room with my knees tucked under me, phone in hand, heart pounding in a rhythm that didn't feel human anymore. By 2, I called the police. The woman on the line was polite, methodical. She asked if we had argued. We hadn't. She asked if he'd left a note. He hadn't. She asked if he had a history of disappearing. He doesn't, I said. He's not like that. He's steady. He always tells me where he's going. Even if it's just to take a walk. She took down my information and told me someone would be in touch. I hung up and sat there staring at the front door, waiting for it to open and for Daniel to walk in like none of this had happened. But he didn't. That night I barely slept. Every sound outside made me jump. Every car that passed made my heart race. I checked his email, his bank account. Nothing. No transactions. No new logins. But when I opened the Ancestry app on my own phone, he'd once logged into it on mine to show me something. Something stood out. A message. Not to me. To Aaron T. Sullivan. It was short, written 3 nights before. I believe we're brothers. I need to see you. I'll be in Spokane by Thursday. My breath caught. Spokane. I googled the address associated with Aaron's profile. It was a suburb just outside the city. Not much to go on, but it was something. I stared at that message for a long time. The words were cold and deliberate. There was no maybe, or I think. Daniel believed. He believed he had a brother. He believed he'd been lied to his entire life. And instead of turning to me, he chose to run toward someone he had never met. And yet, even through the sharp edges of my fear, I understood. This wasn't about leaving me. This was about finding himself. The next morning, I booked a flight to Spokane. I didn't care how unhinged it looked. I didn't care if he got mad. I just needed to find him. I needed to see with my own eyes that he was okay. Because something in my gut whispered that this wasn't just about family secrets anymore. Something darker was unfolding, and Daniel was running straight into it. Spokane was colder than I expected. Gray skies hung low over the city, casting everything in a bleak, flat light that made even the trees look tired. The air smelled like damp earth and distant rain, and for some reason, it felt like exactly the place you'd come to if you were trying to disappear. I checked into a modest little hotel near downtown. Nothing fancy. Just a bed, a desk, and enough quiet to let my thoughts spiral uninterrupted. I dropped my bag on the floor and opened my laptop, pulling up the Ancestry app again. Aaron T. Sullivan. Age 38. No social media, no public family tree. Just a location. Spokane, Washington. I searched everything. Google, Facebook, white pages, old phone directories. Finally, on a local carpentry website, I found a listing for Sullivan and Son Custom Woodworks. There was no photo but the owner's name? Aaron Sullivan. My chest tightened. I stared at the screen for a long moment, heart racing. The next morning, I drove to the address listed on the website. It was a simple workshop. Red brick, large bay door rolled up to reveal a space full of sawdust, lumber, and tools. The smell of cut wood hit me the second I stepped out of the car, sharp and oddly comforting. I waited until a tall man walked out from the back, wiping his hands on a rag. He looked around 38. His face was rugged, beard a little overgrown. His build was stocky, muscular from years of physical labor. And then I saw it. His eyes. They were Daniel's eyes. Same almond shape. Same deep hazel color with that golden ring around the iris. My breath caught. He noticed me staring. "Can I help you?" he asked, cautious but polite. I stepped forward, heart in my throat. I'm sorry to bother you. Are you Aaron Sullivan?" His posture stiffened instantly. "Who's asking?" "My name is Claire. I'm Daniel Meek's wife." He blinked. His whole expression changed. "Daniel." "Yes." He took a DNA test. "A few weeks ago. You were listed as a full sibling. He messaged you on the Ancestry site. 3 nights ago." Aaron stared at me for a beat too long. Then he turned away, running a hand down his jaw. "He came here," he said finally. 2 nights ago." My stomach dropped. "He did." Aaron nodded. "Showed up right here in the shop. Looked like hell. Dark circles under his eyes. Said he drove straight from Portland, barely stopped." "What did he say?" "He told me we were brothers. Just blurted it out. Showed me the DNA match, started asking questions about my adoption. My birth records. My mom, my adoptive mom, never gave me many details. Just that I was adopted from a private agency back in '86. That's the year Daniel was born," I whispered. "He was born in '86 too. St. Marybelle's Hospital?" Aaron asked. I nodded slowly. "Yeah. That's the one." Aaron let out a breath and leaned against the workbench. "He told me that. Said he was born there too. 2 days after me." We were quiet for a long time. I didn't know what to say to him, Aaron said finally, voice low. I didn't grow up wondering about siblings. I mean, sometimes I thought about my biological parents, but I just figured they were young or poor or, I don't know, scared. You don't expect your whole life to shift because of one stupid test. Did he say where he was going? I asked. Aaron shook his head. He left before I could ask. Said he had to find someone. A name he'd come across. Richard Meeks or Richard Meeks Sr. Sound familiar? I blinked hard. My mouth went dry. That was Daniel's grandfather's name. Or, who he thought was his grandfather. Aaron gave me a look. You sure about that? No, I admitted, shaking my head. Now I'm not sure of anything. Aaron walked to a shelf in the corner of the shop and pulled down a folder. He left this. Said I might want it. That it had notes, names, connections he was piecing together. He handed it to me. I opened it slowly. Inside were pages. Some printed, some handwritten. Names circled in red ink. Arrows connecting hospitals, private adoption clinics, midwives, court documents. And at the center of one page, underlined 3 times. Richard Meeks, founder of St. Mary Bell's Outreach and Recovery Center for Women, 1980 to 1993. My blood turned cold. That place shut down decades ago, Aaron said. Turns out it was under federal investigation for illegal adoptions, forged birth certificates, selling babies to wealthy families. I looked up at him, my hands trembling. Daniel didn't know any of this. He suspected, Aaron said. He was close. Real close. That's probably why he ran. Ran where? I don't know, he said, eyes darkening. But if he's going after Meeks, he might be in deeper than either of us thought. I stood frozen, the weight of it all crashing down on me. My husband was chasing the truth. But what if the truth was chasing him back? I spent the next 48 hours in a daze, holed up in my hotel room with Daniel's folder spread out across the bed. Every page was a breadcrumb, each more horrifying than the last. Names of adoption agencies. Addresses of shuttered clinics. Court records blurred by photocopying. A list of infants born at St. Mary Bell's between 1985 and 1987. And over again one name in bold, underlined, always connected. Richard Meeks. Daniel hadn't just stumbled on a family secret. He'd unearthed a buried scandal. What began as a church-funded shelter for troubled girls was actually a front. St. Mary Bell's had been involved in illegal adoptions. Young, vulnerable women coerced into giving up their babies. Some were told their children had died. Others signed papers they didn't understand under pressure or sedation. Records were sealed. Identities erased. Babies sold. And Richard Meeks? He wasn't just the founder. He was the architect. According to one article Daniel had printed, Meeks was suspected of forging birth certificates, paying off doctors, and laundering money through faith-based nonprofits. But charges were never formally filed. The investigation quietly ended in the early 90s. Witnesses vanished. Files disappeared. And Meeks retired to a private estate in northern Idaho, citing health issues and God's plan. No photos. No recent addresses. Just one cryptic note Daniel had written in the margin of a printout. Check Waterton County Land Records. Cabin. Rented P.O. Box. That night I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Daniel driving alone through winding back roads, chasing shadows of a man who built an empire on stolen children. What if he was already there? What if Meeks was still alive? What if Daniel confronted him? The next morning I packed my bag, checked out of the hotel, and drove toward Waterton County. It wasn't far, just over an hour from Spokane, through winding mountain roads and dense pine forest. My GPS lost signal halfway up the incline, and cell reception disappeared entirely. By the time I reached the county seat, it felt like I'd driven into a different world. Small town shops. A post office the size of a garden shed. Locals who looked at me like they knew I didn't belong. I went straight to the land records office. An elderly woman named Marla sat behind a dusty desk, flipping through a romance novel while sipping something from a thermos. When I asked about Richard Meeks, she raised an eyebrow. Heard that name in a long time, she said, pulling out a massive index book. Heard he used to run one of them religious homes back in the day. Does he own property out here? Marla flipped through the pages, slow and deliberate. Bought a parcel of land in '94, she said eventually, tapping a line with her pen. Cabin up by Crater Ridge. No one's lived there full-time in years. Folks say he comes and goes. Real quiet. Can you show me where it is? She hesitated, then pulled out a worn county map. Her finger landed on a crooked road that snaked toward the tree line. You go up Route 7, then take a left where the sign's been knocked down. Follow that dirt path until it turns to gravel. You'll know the place when you see it. Fenced in. Solar panels. Big iron gate. Thank you, I said, folding the map with shaking hands. He gave me a long look. You related to him or something? No, I said softly. But someone I love might be walking into something dangerous. And I need to bring him home. The drive up to Crater Ridge felt endless. The road narrowed until it was barely wide enough for my car. Tall pines loomed on either side like sentinels. Shadows stretched across the path even in daylight. And then I saw it, just like Marla said. An iron gate. Behind it, a winding gravel drive, a long cabin barely visible through the trees, solar panels glinting faintly in the gray light. A mailbox beside the gate read, Meeks. I parked a few feet back and sat in silence. No sign of Daniel's car. No movement. But something told me he was there. I opened the folder again, searching for any clue. Tucked between two pages was a small envelope, unmarked. Inside, a single sheet of paper, handwritten. It was a letter. To Meeks. If you're reading this, I already know what you did. You took me. You took my brother. You took our names. Our mothers. Our lives. I don't know why you did it. I don't care. I just want to see your face when you realize I found you. No signature. Just one line at the bottom. Truth is heavier than blood. I sat there, the wind rustling through the trees, heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Somewhere beyond that gate, my husband was confronting a man who had built a life on lies. And I wasn't sure if Daniel had gone there for answers, or for revenge. I didn't remember getting out of the car. My feet moved before my mind could stop them. Gravel crunched under my boots as I approached the iron gate, each step heavier than the last. The gate was padlocked. Old, rusted, but still solid. A camera was perched above it, half concealed by ivy. Was it recording? Did someone inside already know I was here? I looked around. No other cars. No tire tracks. No voices. Just the dense hum of wind through pines and the sound of my own breathing. Then I saw it, tucked just inside the fence, nearly hidden behind a cluster of brush. Daniel's car. I felt my legs buckle, a rush of nausea rising in my throat. He was here. He had been here. Maybe still was. I rattled the gate uselessly. Called his name. Daniel. Are you in there? Silence. Then a flicker of movement near the cabin window. Someone was inside. I looked around, found a narrow section of fence where the chain link was loose and warped. Likely from years of weather. I didn't think, I just acted. I climbed. My hands scratched. My jacket tore. But I made it over, landing hard on the other side. The air felt different beyond the gate. Heavier. Charged. I followed the gravel path to the cabin, slowly, carefully. The closer I got, the clearer it became. This place hadn't been abandoned. The wood was weathered but well maintained. The windows were clean. The garden bed, though wild, was pruned recently. Solar panels gleamed on the roof, dusted but intact. Someone had been living here, if not full-time then regularly. I reached the porch. My hands were trembling. I raised a fist and knocked. No answer. I tried the handle. Locked. I pressed my ear to the door. Silence. Then just as I turned away, click. The door creaked open a few inches. I froze. Daniel. I whispered. Nothing. I pushed it open. The inside of the cabin was dim, the only light filtering through narrow windows and a single flickering oil lamp near a desk. The air smelled of cedar, dust, and something faintly chemical, like old medicine and damp paper. And then I saw him. Daniel. Sitting at the desk, back to me, hunched over a stack of papers. Daniel, I breathed, rushing toward him. He turned slowly. His face was pale. Thinner than I remembered. His eyes were rimmed with red. But it was him. He blinked like it took a second for my image to register. Claire. I threw my arms around him, trembling. He didn't hug me back immediately. His hands hovered, unsure, then finally wrapped around me with a desperate tightness. I thought you left. I whispered into his shoulder. I had to find him, he said. I had to know. I pulled back, looking into his eyes. Is he here? Meeks. Daniel nodded slowly. He was. He's gone now. Gone where? I don't know, he said, voice low. He left this morning. Took a truck, said he had a doctor's appointment in town. Might have been lying. Might have known I was getting too close. My eyes darted to the desk. Stacks of folders, photographs, microfilm printouts, medical charts, ID forms, all laid out like evidence in a trial. He told me everything, Daniel continued. Didn't even try to deny it. He said he was saving children. Said some mothers were drug addicts. Others were too young. Said God had chosen him to rehome the forgotten. His lip curled in disgust. He said it like he was proud. My stomach twisted. Did he admit to your adoption? Daniel nodded. Said he personally chose the couple that raised me. Told me I was one of the easy ones. Healthy, quiet, marketable. He spat the word like poison. And Aaron. He didn't even remember Aaron's name. Called him batch number 12, before I forced him to look at the test results. Daniel's hands were clenched into fists on his lap. He laughed. Laughed Claire. Said he always knew this day would come. I stared at him. Did you record it? His confession. Daniel reached into his pocket and pulled out a slim digital recorder. Every word. A swell of pride and sorrow hit me at once. My husband, shattered and exhausted, still had the clarity to document the truth. Why didn't you tell me you were coming here? I asked quietly. Because I didn't know what I'd do when I saw him. His voice cracked. I was angry, Claire. I still am. I didn't trust myself. I thought, if I crossed a line, maybe it was better if you weren't there to see it. I grabbed his hand. You didn't. You're here. You didn't become him. He looked at me then and I saw it, the weight of it all. Years of lies. A stolen past. A stolen family. I'm not sure who I am anymore, he whispered. I cupped his face in my hands. You're Daniel. You're my husband. You're a brother. A survivor. And we're going to make sure the world knows exactly what this man did. He closed his eyes. And for the first time in days I saw something shift in his face. Not peace, not yet, but the tiniest glimmer of relief. Of being found. Behind us, a wind gusted through the trees, rattling the window panes. And somewhere down the mountain, a man named Richard Meeks was likely already running. But now he wouldn't get far. The drive back down from Crater Ridge was silent at first. Daniel sat in the passenger seat, staring out the window as the trees rushed past in a blur of green and gray. His hands rested in his lap, still gripping the digital recorder like it was the only thing tethering him to reality. I didn't speak. Not yet. Not until I felt the tension in his shoulders loosen just slightly. It wasn't until we hit the edge of town and cell reception returned that he finally turned to me and said, "He doesn't think he did anything wrong." I glanced at him. He kept calling it a mission, Daniel continued. Like he was some kind of savior, not a criminal. He talked about my mother, my birth mother, as if she was a broken thing that needed him to clean up her mess. He called her weak. Said she should have thanked him. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, trying to stay calm. Do you know her name? He nodded slowly. Linda Barrett. He said she was 19 when I was born. From Detroit. She was sent to St. Mary Bell's by her parents after she got pregnant. He said she wanted to keep me, that she begged, that she fought. But they told her I died during birth. I felt my throat tighten. And she believed them? She did. For a while. He looked down at the recorder. But she kept digging. She said things never added up. She tried to file records but they were sealed. She even came back to the hospital. But Meeks had already shut it down and disappeared. My heart ached at the thought of her, searching for her baby, haunted by a lie. She's still looking for you? Daniel nodded. He said she hired a private investigator 5 years ago. That's why he went off-grid for a while. The PI got close, too close. Meeks paid someone off and vanished again. I slowed the car as we reached the outskirts of town. She's in Michigan, he added, voice softer now. He said she still leaves a candle in the window every year on my birthday. Just in case I'm alive. I swallowed hard, tears pricking my eyes. Do you want to find her? He didn't answer right away. Just stared out the window. I don't know if I'm ready, he admitted. But I need to. I need to look her in the eyes and tell her I'm okay. That I made it. We pulled into the motel parking lot where I'd been staying. Daniel didn't get out immediately. He looked down at the recorder again, then opened the door. Inside, I made us tea, more for the comfort than the taste. Daniel sat on the bed, flipping through his notebook, adding notes, updating timelines. He was calm now, focused. The storm in him had shifted into something quieter. Purpose. What do we do next? I asked. We go to the police, he said simply. We give them everything. The audio. The documents. The names of the other kids he took. There were files in the cabin. Dozens. Photos, forged certificates, even receipts. I emailed copies to myself. I nodded. Good. And then, he hesitated. We call Linda. My heart swelled. We spent the next 3 hours organizing everything. I typed up a summary of events. Daniel filled out names and dates, cross-checking with documents he had gathered. We drafted an official statement and transferred the audio files to a flash drive. By the time we walked into the Waterton County Sheriff's Department, the sun was starting to set. The officer at the front desk looked skeptical at first, until Daniel slid the folder across the counter. Within minutes, we were in a private room with a detective. Daniel spoke calmly, methodically, laying out every detail. The detective, a stern woman in her 50s named Detective Harris, listened carefully, taking notes. You understand, she said finally, that these are very serious allegations. I know, Daniel replied. But they're true. She inserted the flash drive into her laptop, put on headphones and began listening to the recording. Her expression shifted minute by minute, from disbelief to horror to something close to rage. When she finally looked up, her voice was quiet but firm. We're opening a full investigation. And we'll be contacting the FBI. Daniel nodded. There's one more thing. He pulled a printed photo from his notebook, the one Aaron had given him, a blurry scan of his own adoption record. On the back, Aaron had written a list of names, other adoptees from St. Marybelle's who had come forward over the years. Some had questions. Others had suspicions. Start with them, Daniel said. They deserve answers too. Harris took the photo. We will. We left the station just after dark. Outside the air was crisp. The world felt bigger somehow. More dangerous. More real. But lighter too, like a weight had been lifted from the ground beneath our feet. Daniel turned to me as we reached the car. You came for me. I smiled faintly. Of course I did. He took my hand, holding it tightly. I don't know what's next. I don't know who I am. But I know I'm not doing this alone. No, I said, leaning against his shoulder. You're not. We stood there in the dark, side by side. Behind us, Justice was waking up. And ahead, waiting in the quiet distance, was a mother who had never stopped believing her son was out there, alive. It took 3 days to locate Linda Barrett. We didn't rush it, not because we didn't want to, but because something about it needed to be done right. This wasn't a casual phone call. It was the unraveling of a decades-old lie. It was the moment a mother who'd grieved a child would hear that he hadn't died, but had been taken. Daniel spent those 3 days in quiet preparation. He reread every document. He listened to the audio recording twice, then never again. He wrote down what he wanted to say, then crumpled the paper and rewrote it over and over. He was terrified. Terrified of what she'd say. Terrified of what she'd remember. Terrified of the pain she'd still be carrying, because he was carrying his own, and it was already heavy enough. We finally got her number through a support group for mothers of lost adoptees. Daniel had seen her name mentioned once on a forum thread titled, "The Child I Never Met." A moderator verified her identity and reached out on our behalf. The next morning we got a call. Linda answered on the first ring. Her voice was cautious, careful. A woman who had learned to shield hope behind layers of grief. This is Linda Barrett. Daniel froze. I gently touched his arm. He closed his eyes, drew in a shaking breath and spoke. Hi. My name is Daniel Meeks. I think I might be your son. The silence on the other end stretched. Then a soft, broken inhale. Oh my God, she whispered. Daniel swallowed. I was born in St. Marybelle's. June 14, 1986. I have a DNA match to a man named Aaron Sullivan. He was adopted too. We're brothers. Still no words. Then she said it. Barely more than a breath. I knew it. Daniel blinked. You did. I never believed them, she said, voice trembling. They told me you died. That you were stillborn. But I never saw you. They wouldn't let me. They just took you. I screamed. I begged. My father told me it was God's will. But I knew. I knew. Her voice cracked and the sound of her sobs traveled clearly through the speaker. Raw. Unfiltered. Daniel's eyes brimmed with tears. He couldn't speak for a long moment. I'm okay, he said eventually, voice tight. I have a good life. A wife. Friends. A career. I had to find you. I've waited 37 years for this call, she whispered. I never stopped waiting. We arranged to meet in person that weekend. She lived in a modest town outside Detroit, in a white craftsman house with a wide porch and flower boxes under the windows. She stood outside when we arrived, wearing a navy blue sweater and holding a photograph in both hands. When Daniel stepped out of the car, she didn't move at first. She just stared. And then suddenly she dropped the photo and ran to him. The embrace was instant and consuming. Years of separation collapsed in a single, shattering collision. Her hands were in his hair. His arms wrapped around her like a man holding onto the last lifeline in a storm. She wept. So did he. I stood back and let it happen. There were no words that could fill that moment. Only breath, heartbeat, and the quiet sound of a mother whispering her son's name for the very first time. Inside, her home was warm and lived in. Dozens of framed photographs lined the walls. Some of family, some of landscapes, but none of children. Just one frame, always dusted, always centered on the mantel. A baby blanket. A black and white ultrasound. A birth announcement that read Joseph Barrett, June 1986. I named you Joseph, she said softly. I called you Joey. Daniel smiled faintly. I like that. They sat for hours. She told him about her life, her parents, the years of silence after St. Mary bells, the regret, the anger, the unshakable feeling that her baby was still out there. He told her about his childhood, his adoptive parents, the moment he found Aaron, the trip to the cabin. She listened. Without judgment. Without bitterness. Only love. When he played her the recording of Meek's confession, she closed her eyes as if each word burned. But she didn't cry. She opened them and said, He doesn't get to define your story anymore. You do. Daniel nodded. I think I'm ready, he said. For what? To be myself, he said. To stop being afraid of who I am. Or who I used to be. I want to know where I came from. But I also want to choose where I go. Linda smiled, teary-eyed. That's all I ever wanted for you. That night we stayed in a nearby hotel. Daniel sat on the edge of the bed, quiet, thoughtful. I spent so long chasing something, he said. A name. A history. A face. But the truth is, what I needed most wasn't the past. He looked at me. It was to be seen. To be found. Not by blood. But by love. I reached over and held his hand. You're found, Daniel. In every way that matters. And outside, the wind moved gently through the trees, no longer carrying secrets. Only peace. Only silence. Only home.